Of all the classic video game mascots I thought we'd see remasters and new releases for, there were two that really surprised me. While I, along with many others, have been waiting for any inkling of a Banjo-Kazooie or Conker project, out of nowhere, the Gex Trilogy got a remaster. I guess we're going back in tail time. Let's take a look at the history of this character and his journey into the spotlight. Today we're looking at the story of Gex the Gecko.
Were you expecting someone else?
Bugs may be good for some, but they're not for everybody. But you know what is for everybody? Jerky. Meats Expectations reached out to me to promote their new jerky line, Blaze and Glaze Pork and Signature Beef. Signature Beef has that great, fantastic smoky beef flavor, while Blaze and Glaze offers a sort of spicy variant. Both equally delicious. Use my link below to get yours today. But for now, it's tail time. The first title released on April 7th, 1995, the original Gex is actually a 2D platforming game and was developed by Crystal Dynamics. As someone who had the N64 growing up as my first console, I didn't realize Gex started as a 2D entry until a while after I got Gex 3. I believe that the original game in the series was Gex Enter the Gecko, and for a while, I thought there must be some game in between these two N64 entries I had, but I could never find it. And there was good reason I could never find the mysterious other Gex game, because it was never on the N64. Until Gex made the jump into 3D, he had his first release on the 3DO. The 3DO was a console that I don't know anyone who actually had growing up, mostly due to it being super expensive at the time. In fact, in mentioning the 3DO, I feel I should explain exactly what it is, because most people probably think of the 3DO as a Panasonic standalone console. And while that is correct, it wasn't just Panasonic. It was conceived by Electronic Arts founder Trip Hawkins, who with a team from New Technologies Group created the 3DO company and developed and designed the console specifications that they would then license out to electronic companies like Panasonic. In addition to Panasonic, Gold Star and Sanyo created their own variants, though the Panasonic one seems to be the most well-known and popular. And even though Gex did become the #1 selling game on the 3DO and eventually was bundled in to help sell the console, due to the 3DO being a commercial failure, Gex didn't sell near as well as his competitors Mario or Sonic. I think we can attribute the poor sales of the console to its cost. At launch, the 3DO retailed for $699. Adjusting for today, it would have launched for $1,615, which is insane. This would have made even the Steam machine look like a bargain. This led to the first Gex game getting a port over to PS1, Sega Saturn, and Windows as well. As I said earlier, no one I knew had the 3DO, and I don't know anyone who had the original Gex game either. Let's talk about some brief history of Gex. Gex was conceived originally in 1993 by Lyle Hall, who had really just started working at Crystal Dynamics, which itself started just 1 year prior. He was designing an original character around the idea of being a Hollywood stuntman he called Gecko X. All the levels would have been themed around film genres, and players would earn money by performing stunts. One cool tidbit is the backgrounds would have contained royalty-free stock footage of each respective genre. The team constructed a few levels, but after they built a western level, the team just didn't find it good. Especially with the floating platforms they wanted to add, it just didn't look right. So lead programmer Greg Tavares suggested they retool Gex into something a bit different. This would eventually morph into the TV-watching, wisecracking spy Gecko we all know. They intended for Gex to be the 3DO mascot to rival Mario and Sonic, though I don't think he ever really came close to those heights. In addition to the retooling of the game, the development wasn't without its challenges, the main challenge seeming to be time constraints. The development cycle was 21 months, and the game was being developed for 32-bit CD-based hardware, offering higher fidelity and more memory than your typical 16-bit. This posed a challenge for the art team as they were a team of 2 and needed to create more assets than a normal 16-bit game that they were used to, and at a higher fidelity. The level design got way too ambitious for the amount of time they had, so the team had to cut a bunch of content from the game. All that being said though, the game still did well and people found it fun. The plot of Gex is silly, with Rez pulling the Gecko into his TV in the media dimension to make him the mascot for the network. You need to progress through the game's hub map and pop between different TV themes and worlds by collecting remotes from levels. Comedian Dana Gould would become the iconic voice of Gex and continue throughout his trilogy, dropping one-liners and TV and movie references left and right. Gex played fairly smooth. He could run, jump, use his tongue to get items, tail whip, and do this sort of springy tail bounce along with climbing on anything and everything. Graphically, the game is pretty cool looking, with Gex having that DK Country pre-rendered look, while the backgrounds felt like highly detailed 2D platformer goodness. The game would occasionally have some neat 3D effects and handle bosses like a champ. The final confrontation with Rez I find so unique and interesting as you battle with him in his lair on top and around screens. This game was just begging to be made in 3D, so that's exactly what they did. In the next entry where Gex would enter another dimension, the third dimension, so he could follow the likes of Mario and other mascots at the time moving into that space, Gex Enter the Gecko is the first entry in 3D. I have somewhat of a special connection to this particular title. When I was young, my mother had a lot of health issues that really surfaced after she had my little brother, and because of that, we often had to spend a lot of time in the hospital. At the hospital, they had a cart they would wheel out, and it had an N64 on it, and one of the games it had was Gex Enter the Gecko. That's when I first played this game. As a kid, I really loved any 3D platformer. I remember really liking how Gex could get power-ups and costumes. The rabbit in particular sits in the back of my mind since you get it really early on. Gex's moveset from the original game is intact, along with an addition like the long kick. He's relatively fast and just feels like how he should in all honesty. The plot in this one is Gex is retired just trying to watch TV and Rez resurfaces. The government finds Gex and recruits him to stop Rez from taking over the media dimension. You once again need to cross over into different themed TV worlds and collect remotes to stop him. You have a Looney Tunes world, a horror world, kung fu action world, a world inside electronics, a space world, a prehistoric world, and the Rez world, which combines screens and organic bodily grossness. Each world has several levels and bosses like Mecha Rez, a play on Mechagodzilla, and Mushu Pork. I mean, just look at this fight. I love it. All their fights are themed around a respective world in some way, and these outfits I mentioned earlier are so much fun and reference their respective theme as well, like a Stormtrooper space outfit for the space world, or a gi for the Kung Fu world. The outfits themselves are just cosmetic, but epic. I think this game does a really good job of taking the original structure of Gex while elevating it into a 3D space, and it seems like it worked fairly well because it spawned another sequel. This is the one I was most familiar with growing up, as I actually owned it on N64, Gex 3 Deep Cover Gecko. Of course, Gex has to travel back into the media dimension to save the love interest Agent Extra, played by Marlise Andrade of Baywatch fame. The game really doubles down on the spy theme this time around, and Gex has a hub world themed around mission control, complete with a training grounds and a butler named Alfred. Very unique. I never knew of a butler named Alfred. He's a turtle, and he's actually really charming. I love his voice acting personally. Once again, we enter TV-themed worlds. This time it feels like rather than a specific hub world theme, the levels play off its like level hubs, and each level has an individual theme. My personal favorite is actually Mystery TV. Gex will dress like a detective, but it also features a vampire transformation that can glide. And if you aren't aware, a little secret is you can go into the hub world room where the Mystery TV is located, and if you stare in first person at the vampire Gex photo, you'll change. I love stuff like this. The goal of the game to snag remotes is still present, and I didn't mention before, but the two 3D entries follow a Mario 64-like structure, with selecting a mission and going for that specific remote. Gex 3 doesn't have as many bosses as previous entries, but of course we have Rez. But more importantly, this brain of Oz lives rent-free in my head as nightmare fuel for me as a kid. And we also have a wrestler called Rockhard. There are some mini-bosses in the game though, and they're all interesting, like Evil Santa. Graphically, this is definitely the best looking of the three, and it makes sense since this game is the latest release. Now what about Gex Today? Well, Gex, like my previous video on Glover, got a remaster, though with a whole trilogy as he had 3 games. They were indeed planning a sequel, Gex 4, and it reached early pre-production and design, though ultimately was cancelled. It would have been a 6th gen console release on like PS2 and all that. The reviews for the original trilogy were generally positive, especially on the PlayStation side of things, while the N64 version received mixed to negative. This is due to the PS1 version running better and looking better in general, offering higher texture quality, better audio,
Now that's what I call getting some tail.
and fully fleshed out visions of the developers, and those great FMV cutscenes. While the N64 version had performance issues and watered down levels, though it did offer a few exclusive levels like a Titanic level in Enter the Gecko. The internet claims platformer fatigue was also a thing on the 64 at this point, since Gex 3 in particular was a late release, but since I love platformers, the more the better. I'm disregarding that assumption. It was basic in structure compared to other platformers at the time like Banjo or Conquer, that brought something new. It followed the more saturated Mario 64 format, but I honestly don't really see that as a bad thing. Overall, I don't think the 64 versions are bad, just the PlayStation one is touted as being the one to play. Gex overall is very charming and fun. He may talk a little too much,
Licking my way to the top.
but I don't get annoyed like other YouTubers seem to get. I think his catalog is definitely worth checking out, and hey, even if we don't get another title, we at least have a nice trilogy of games. Games coming in threes are nice. Well, that's all I have for you. Be sure to drop a like and help spread my content and subscribe so you don't miss a future upload. Maybe hit that noti bell with your tail too. Until next time, have a good one.